Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Authors on Mission podcast. I'm going to start off with a little bit of imagery for you today. Picture this. You're cleaning out your grandmother's attic and you discover a box of old cassette tapes. Your grandfather's voice emerges from decades of silence, telling stories of survival, love, loss, and secrets that have shaped your entire family. Most people would listen once and put them away, but Roni Robbins has turned them into an award-winning novel. In today's podcast, we're going to be talking with her all about her debut novel, Hands of Gold, One Man's Quest to Find the Silver Lining in Misfortune. This book has earned both the 2023 International Book Awards for Multicultural Fiction and the Global Book Awards Gold Medal. This is more than just a Holocaust novel or immigrant story. It's a masterclass in how real family history, when filtered through the skilled hands of an experienced storyteller, can become something that resonates far beyond its origins. So we're going to be chatting with Roni today and learn all about her writing process, some writing tips, and of course, the incredible story of her book. Roni, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to your audience.
Of course. I'm really looking forward to it too. I'm very glad that we connected because I've had a lot of authors on here and it's always my favorite ones when they bring their stories to life from their own family history. So it's always very beautiful to know that. But before any of this, you actually did have a very extraordinary journalism career spanning 4 decades before this. So I guess I'm curious to know, what drew you to storytelling in the first place? And how did you know you wanted to be a writer?
I always like to write. I like to write from penmanship to calligraphy to poetry. It just came naturally to me. It felt right, massaging words around and making them lyrical. So I guess I started out with those aspects of writing, and I enjoyed writing my essays for English class. So I'm like an odd bird in that way. And then a friend from high school said she was going into journalism and picking a career. And I said, that sounds like a good career for me too. And I took a journalism class and I won the opportunity to write the opening copy for the yearbook, which was the class that I was taking. So it all seemed to work out well. So I pursued writing as a career and learned journalism, got a scholarship to go to a journalism school in the South, even though I was from the North of the United States, and worked my way up from reporter to editor a couple of times already, but in the school newspaper in college. And then it just was a natural fit for me to use my love of writing, which at one point I thought I was going to be a musician because I like to write poetry, which could be lyrics. And so I could have had a different path, but I wasn't that great at singing or performing. So I chose this route. Seems like it was a better one to make money, probably equally as challenging, although newspapers paid me to write for them. So there was some financial aspects versus just struggling to create music. Anyway, I wasn't a superstar in that way. I had to find my own way. So.
Well, hey, that's how it all usually goes, right? You never know where you might end up, but what's important is that you're learning from each experience and that as one opportunity comes into the picture, another one might unfold after that. So here you are now with your wonderful book that you've derived from your own family history. So it's great to know that all your experience from the past with the journalism and everything else really did shape this in a way. I'm wondering, to what extent did your skills from journalism apply when you sat down to turn these cassette tapes into the written word? Did you employ any strategies from one to another?
Well, storytelling is storytelling, whether it's a short story that is in the newspaper or a magazine. I've written for both, or it's this long form, which was new to me, but it's the same concept of telling a story, holding the reader's interest, providing the background that makes it realistic, and giving the reader something to sink their teeth into. So the skills that come into play from journalism that I found were helpful, not only storytelling, but also research capability, the ability to go and learn about a certain subject in depth, where to find that information. When I started out, it was still in library form, not online when I started, but now most everything is online. But you still have to have the skills to be able to know how to provide that kind of background, and also data to support any kind of claims that you have, and also historical references. So I wanted to back up anything I had to say, and those are still the skills that I use today in journalism. So those particular skills, research, writing, organization, and storytelling are some of the main. Editing is important too. For any writer. So I used all of the skills that I learned through journalism and applied them, so that everything would be legitimate, credible, and the readers would feel that and feel like they're really getting a story that is historically accurate.
Absolutely. And I see exactly where you're coming from there. Any book, especially nonfiction, has to be credible. You need to make sure your sources are well backed up and that everything, fits into place. So it's great that you did go through that research process, which I'm sure is a little bit unique, being that it was your own grandfather's, life that you've been, translating onto the page, as opposed to somebody else's story, that you've done in the past. So I'm wondering, were there any particular hurdles that you faced when, writing this particular tale?
These are great questions. So spot on. So it was personal, yes,
right.
But as I write powerful stories about people who go through hardships, even as a journalist, I separate myself from the facts at the moment to be able to draw out the emotions. So people will ask me, did you cry when you wrote the novel? And I didn't until it was all done, because there's no sense in just crying about it, and the loss for me of not having these people in my life anymore. I really tried to separate myself from the details and just do a really good job of reporting the facts and learning about what this family went through before I even existed. So it was personal, which made it more powerful. I hope it did for me. I think that most writers write what they know. So this is what I know. So I wrote what I know.
And that's the exact perfect way you should be doing it, right? You do write what you know, you write what speaks to you and what resonates with you. And that's exactly what you did here. So to transition into the book itself, I'd like to begin by saying I see you have it right there behind you on screen. I'm wondering if you want to show off the cover to us a little bit. It's a beautiful cover, and I'm glad that you were able to kind of get a up-close look at it. Well, I always like to give authors a chance to show off the cover because it is a very important aspect of the book, and especially if you had any hand in creating it, it's always good to chat a little bit about that, because authors everywhere can learn from that same process. So I'm wondering, how did this come about? Was it the publishers who kind of created it, or did you have a say in the design work at all?
So I did have my hands on it, hands of gold. I was searching for images online of weathered hands. I thought that was appropriate for the book. It's not exactly what the hands of gold comes from, but I thought that was part of his journey. So I wanted some weathered hands. And what I found ended up being copyrighted. So I was working for a newspaper at the time, and actually a newspaper that I wrote a column about years earlier. It talked about listening to this cassette tape. So that publication is tied in with this novel so much. So a friend who works there, who does more of a digital type work, found it for me. I guess I asked if she ever came across some hands, or I told her my situation, that I was looking for an image, but it turns out my image was copyrighted. And she found this image for me that was just perfect. And she probably found some others for me too, but this was the one that was just totally perfect. I mean, you can see I can grab it again, but you can see in the fingers, the weathered, you might not be able to see it. And I've got all my awards on it, but on this one, but you can see into the fingers, the calluses, the rough fingers. So
it shows the story of a life lived.
Correct.
Right. Well, it's a beautiful design, and it's really interesting to know the process behind it too. It goes to show to all of our authors, you might not have, it easily accessible, your design for your book, but if you take the extra step, reach out to somebody to get a little bit of assistance, it could definitely, lead you a long way. A lot of authors think that writing is a solitary endeavor, but you kind of need that team with you to make sure it's exactly what you need your book to be, which is what you did there with the cover, at least. So really incredible stuff. But that's just the cover, of course. So kind of, opening it up and looking a little bit into the pages, you do tell a story, of course, of Sam facing an incredible series of hardships, from tuberculosis to death to workplace violence. So I'm wondering, if you can share a little bit about that and what that process was like in translating true events to the fiction world. We talked a little bit about the research, but once you have the facts grounded, there's an element of turning it into narrative. So yeah, I'm going to kind of open the floor to you. What was that all like for you?
So it was very difficult for somebody who's used to quoting people for my stories, but it also gave me some literary license that I'm not able to have on a regular basis. I can't just make up dialogue. You can't just make up quotes, or the sources won't be too happy. So as many times as I wish I could create the words for my sources, or at least correct them, I can't do that. I have to stick to what they give me. So in this way, first of all, I didn't know what my grandparents talked about. I didn't know what anyone talked about. So I had to create dialogue. And I felt like that wasn't fair to say it was nonfiction if I was making up dialogue. Also, so freedom to play with the quotes, but also in terms of the dialogue, but also freedom to make scenes even more dramatic than they were, or play around with the facts. Again, these are things I can't do as a journalist. You don't play with the facts, you stick to the facts. But of course you can be creative, but there's definite rules about what to do in journalism, a certain style and such, that you have to stick to. And you don't have as many of those rules as a novelist. So I changed the names to protect the innocent, because some of them are still alive. A good number of them are still alive. And I made up the dialogue. Yes, I had the cassette tapes with my grandfather's voice and his quotes, so I incorporated those too, but they weren't enough. I mean, every single scene had to have dialogue, so it was quite challenging. And I changed the names, and I played with some of the more dramatic scenes. So like the workplace shooting spree. My grandfather actually did talk to the gunman in the real story, which I have a newspaper article from 1958 that shows him, that quotes him as talking to the gunman. But I took it a step further, and I helped him to save the day and become a hero in the workplace shooting spree and save people. So instead of him just talking to the gunman, he actually was able to get the gun away from the gunman. So, and so it was just a small touch that made a scene that was already dramatic. If he was just talking to the gunman, who cares? But he took it a step further and was super brave to even do that, but then super brave, it's just the next possible step. So, so I used some literary license, which I don't get a chance to use that often. And I think it worked.
Yeah. I think it's very good that you did also. It's an element of balancing truth from a little bit of added drama, but I see why you did it, because sprucing up the story a little bit, adding a little bit of dramatic flair. It never hurt anybody, and it's good to do that. It's also very incredible that you did have the cassette tapes with you, because I'm sure that gave you a good idea for the original voice, and from there you can kind of amplify it throughout the rest of the dialogue that you did add in. So it's
Absolutely.
a good thing, a very fortunate thing that I think a lot of authors might not have at their disposal. So it's good that you did.
Mhm.
So moving forward from that, I think another important thing for us to chat a little bit about is the theme of the novels, which of course, at least I think is kind of finding the silver linings in misfortune. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about that theme and what it taught you as you went about writing it. I'm sure it's at least it taught me, and I think the audience is, if they were to ever look through the pages a bit, about resilience and hope in the face of tragedy.
All of
So,
that. So, we go through a bit in our lives. We have our challenges. This family had more challenges than others. My grandfather was told he was terminal with tuberculosis at 26 and he lived till 86. He was a clinical trial patient for an experimental treatment that saved his life and saved other people's lives. And I told you about the workplace shooting spree. They lost most of their family in the Holocaust. And yet there was hope in all of that. You see, there was duality. Yes, he got TB, but yes, he also was able to save his life and countless other lives. Yes, he was in a workplace shooting spree, but he saved people. Yes, they lost all their family in the Holocaust. I mean, that's huge. I mean, there's no way to come back from that. It's not really a but. One family member, the silver lining, if you will, is that one family member got out and he was able to have a reunion with him in the book. So and just that life goes on after experiencing anything in our lives. Feel like that the pandemic made this a little cliche. We all went through the pandemic. And by the way, that we think that COVID was the biggest infectious disease killer in the world. It felt like it for a while, but tuberculosis remains the biggest worldwide infectious disease killer. COVID took a lot of attention away from that for a while and probably will continue to, but people still struggle with tuberculosis and people still struggle with COVID. So I feel like that we can all learn from what this family went through, what this couple went through together. My grandmother had to be a breadwinner at a time when women did whatever it took to raise your family, to provide for your family. Remember, my grandfather was in and out of the rehabilitation and the hospitals for this infectious disease. He had to stay away from the family. So she took control of the situation and was there to raise the family and support them. And so it is resilience, because I like to say, what is the alternative? I mean, do you just shrivel up and crawl in a corner, or do you push past it like we pushed past COVID? And I mean, there was definite tragedy there that felt so very difficult, but we make it through these situations.
Yeah, I think that's something that everybody can learn from. I mean, of course, what they went through is a whole nother level from what anybody reading the book might be currently experiencing. But it gives us the strength to know, okay, they got through it, well, to an extent, and they were, now here you are, generations later, able to share their story. So it's a matter of learning from it, I would say, and moving forward and remembering
Definitely.
it. It is a beautiful memory that you've been able to capture here, and even if some of it's a little bit of dramatic play in there, it's a great way to present the story and hold and move it forward.
Thank
So I
you.
think it's really great. All of this said, I mean, I'm wondering to know if you could offer some insight, if you have any advice to other writers who might want to turn to family history and writing their fictional account of their family history. What advice would you give them?
Just do it. Start researching. I was lucky that my family already had family trees set up. It was in the works. So I was able to capitalize on that. Both the sides of the family had developed a family tree. So I used that. We had a lot that were interested in the family and how the family developed over time from Europe to here. So somebody taking an interest in genealogy, or you yourself taking an interest in genealogy, helps to pull something like this off using documentation from census figures, census records, and other records that are available through family history centers and genealogy searches. It's all online now. Like I said, I had to physically go to the archives and the Family History Center and libraries and find the information, but it's all much easier to access now. So those are hidden gems that are available and people can capitalize on. I think that's very important for creating a family history, as I did, to preserve family history in this way.
And I think it's great now that even though unfortunately you did have to go through a little bit of difficulty, a lot of things are online. It's easier to access this information. So if an author's out there right now and they want to follow in your footsteps, time can't be any better, right? Because we have everything at our disposal. So that's just wonderful to know. So all this considered, you have the book out, you've been really spreading the word. I'm wondering what else might be on the horizon for you. What have you been dabbling in? Any exciting new projects on the horizon?
So I'm working very slowly on a novel loosely based on my dad's life also. So he was a blacksmith. He started out in our garage in New York. He had a lot of articles written about him. So that's my documentation that I was talking about. And then I will fill in family tree information on that side of the family, per se, to make it a realistic story about his background. Now, he and my mom were in my first book. I already have that, and it will start out from there. So it will mention some of the information from the first book in that way, because my mom's family is who's depicted in Hands of Gold. And it's my mom who's telling the story about her romance with my dad and his interesting pursuits. And so from Hands of Gold to A Mighty Arm is the next one. Seems to go well together, and moving up the arm there. But I mean, from hands to arm, but appendages. But I am starting it. I started it and ended it, which I think are the most powerful parts of a book. And I enjoy setting it up and wrapping it up. And now I'm working my way through. So it's a slow process because I'm also freelancing still for 2 publications. So I have to find time, or else I have to cut the freelancing off to dedicate myself to working just on the book. And it's so much easier to write an article than it is to write a book for me. So there's that challenge.
Understood. Well, hey, I mean, it is a really noble pursuit, kind of continuing the family story, making a sequel to the book, but in a way that continues to honor your family. So I think that's wonderful. And if it's anything like this first one, it's going to get some great reception, and it's only going to continue to benefit other people who want to learn about their own families as well. So beautiful stuff here I think we have. So all this being said, if people do want to be up to date and in the know and learn more about you and when these next books might be coming out, where can they best get in touch?
So my website, which you may be able to see behind me, is RoniRobbins.com. You got to spell my name right, RoniRobbins.com. And so that'll tell you everything, the background for the book, why I wrote the book, the original story. It was a column in a newspaper, how that developed, my journalism background. So, I've written for some very big publications, including Huffington Post and Forbes and New York Daily News, which is the publication that my grandfather was in 1958 that I mentioned. So I ended up freelancing for that same publication some 60 years later. So that's one of them. You'll read that. You can read some sample articles, book talk, book club questions, where I'm going to be next selling the book, different appearances, podcasts like this one. They're all there.
Well,
And
beautiful.
you can follow me on social media because I'm all over social media. I've got like 4 Facebook accounts, including Roni Robbins, Roni Robbins author, and I use Ronnie Kane Robbins, which will tie in with my new book, but Kayne was my maiden name, so I can keep in touch with those people. That's my main one. I'm on Instagram, I'm on X, I'm on LinkedIn, which I think is how we found each other. Yeah,
exactly. Well, hey, it's wonderful. We're going to put the links to these wonderful platforms in the description box of this podcast today. So if you are interested, everybody, you can go ahead and click on over, get connected with Roni. It's an incredible thing that she's doing here. So I highly recommend doing that, staying up to date with being in the know, and you'll be ready for the next book when it comes out too. So Roni, I'm wondering if you have any other insights to share with the audience today, any bits of knowledge to leave them with as we begin to wrap up?
if you've got a book inside you, take it off your bucket list and do it. And that's easier said than done because there's a lot that we have to accomplish in our life, right? And it's hard to know the direction. It is a laborious process. But I think the only way you get to fulfill your dreams or your goals is by doing it. So carve out that time. And if you need any help, I like to help up and coming authors too. People help me along the way. So I like to help others. Anyone can reach out to me through Yahoo. Again, Roni Robbins, Roni.Robbins@Yahoo. So you can reach out to me or through my website or through social media. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that anyone has because authors help each other through this process. We learn from each other.
I love it.
I think that's important. And also, get your hands on Hands of Gold and tell other people about it. And it's on Amazon and every place that books are sold, and in some libraries throughout the country and in Israel too. So Hands of Gold by Roni Robbins, and get your golden hands on Hands of Gold and tell other people about it.
That's wonderful. Thank you for all that, for those beautiful bits of last insights right there. So I really appreciate you coming on today. We've discussed a ton of information about you and your writing tips and, of course, Hands of Gold. So to all of our listeners who are out there and inspired by Roni's story today, go ahead and find the book wherever books are sold. You can connect with her online in the links in the description box of the podcast today. And just thank you so much for joining us. It's really been a pleasure to hear not just about your grandfather's story, but your own journey as a writer as well. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Same here.
And to all of our listeners, just remember that every family has stories worth preserving. Every writer has the power to transform personal history into universal truth. So keep writing, keep leading, and keep inspiring. We'll see you on the next episode of the Authors on Mission podcast.
This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.